Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Buckle up before I introduce you to our guest. Here's a quote just for this episode. Mission: eliminate the friction of clients and agents doing business together. All things insurance group's mission. Our guest today, partner, friend, leader, disruptor, innovator, in a space that you may or may not be familiar of. If you listen to the Culture Matters podcast and you've listened to season 9 all the way into season 76, episode 100, 134, 288, 474, 758, and 90, I had to write it down. There's so much value. Go listen to those episodes after this podcast. Over a 15-year career in the insurance world, helping thousands and thousands and thousands of customers who become clients, who become practically family. Pete Fournier is a leader in the industry. I'm proud to call him a friend and a partner, somebody that I think is all the qualities that it takes to build something amazing. And the company that you are creating with your team, brother, is unbelievable. So thanks for coming back on the Culture Matters podcast and going into some of these industry as well as consumer facing and leadership topics. So if you haven't listened to the show, go listen to those episodes after this. It's chock full of value. You could see a real life example of 0 to 100 million plus. So that's my intro. Thanks for coming back, Pete.
Appreciate you, bro. Thanks always for having me.
Eliminate the friction of clients and agents doing business together. What friction?
Oh, there's so much. So, like, we'll start on the ease of transacting business in 2025. So, little backup. I started in 2010, for those that haven't listened in the past. And like back then, it was hard or harder. Like I can't imagine the insurance agents in the 70s transacting business. You had to use maps and fly all over the country and everything was on paper. But 2010, 2011, 2012 was the same thing. Not a lot of electronic signatures, had to get wet signed everything. Now in 2025, you can sit in your pajamas and cold call people or generate meta leads or whatever you want to do and transact business in your basement. And some agents are doing that, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, but also simultaneously, that's causing a lot more client aggravation, regulation to come into play because the easier it is to facilitate business in our industry, arguably the more friction it causes between the end user client and the agent. Like you don't call people in 2025 and then be happy you called. It's
Mm,
quite the opposite because everybody has access to the data, to the advertising, to the marketing. And it used to be as such, hey, I did fill this out requesting insurance, versus this is my 50th time I got cold today. So part of the mission of
wow.
ATIG was not being just another transactor in the insurance industry, not being just, I'm going to plow through these leads, get a bunch of closes, get a bunch of sales, never speak to these people again. So we want to make it easier for our team and the end user client to transact in a happy, fulfilled manner. I put out a reel the other day, like your clients should be happy they purchased from you, not that they got sold a bill of goods from just another call center or whatever the case may be. So
Mm.
long way to answer that question, but yeah, I think the ease of transaction causes more friction between the producer and the end user in this day and age.
What core values do you think you built or were built through you being in that time when there was more friction from you for you as an agent to in the process?
Yeah, I think one is not slinging shit to your end user client. You know, when I first started, it was a lot of trickle down teachings, and You just did what your upline told you to do, whether it was selling meh products at higher comp, or this is how you should be transacting business. Now from a value standpoint, like, we lead with the solution first. If that solution pays us as a producer $100, okay, we need higher ticket sales, but you're not going to poo-poo that one client for $100. Like, do what's best for them. So the from a selling perspective, good salespeople solve problems, but great salespeople create the problem and then sell the solution or provide the solution to it. So we are always solutions based first, never necessarily comp, because the more problems that you solve for the client, the more money you're going to make at the end of the day anyway. So stop trying to swing for the fences, making that big nut on selling something that's mediocre at best.
When things were harder, do you think there's when things it's because it's an interesting paradox. You're saying I wrote this down like that when things as as the industry's gotten easier, it's led to friction.
Hmm.
So, what relationship when it was harder, what what does that take from the professional, right? How do they
You know,
have
it
to
it
think?
was it
Who do
was
they have to
harder.
be?
Go ahead.
No, no, no. Yeah. How do they
Yeah,
have to think? Who do they have to be? Because if
it
I'm thinking if things have gotten faster now, but they can tap into some of that wisdom that you develop through your experience, that could be very valuable to people.
Yeah, so I think about it from like the entrepreneurial journey. Like, if you listen to a lot of these guys and gals that have made it, it's not necessarily the hundreds of millions of dollars at the end. It was, I went through the muck and the mud and I got to that, and now that reward is the fulfillment of the process. I think it's the same thing from 10, 15 years ago, because it was harder to transact business and I had to get on a red-eye flight to Texas or Arizona or whatever. You coddled that client. You took care of them. Like, because it was so much harder to get one-on-one time to eventually have them sign on the dotted line. You needed to be prepped, you needed to be skilled, you needed to have an amazing talk track, you needed solutions, and all that culminated together. And then you had to not be an idiot and not forget one page of an application, or bring a scanner on a plane with you. Like, it was just harder. So you took more care in your process, rather than today. And I'm not saying this for everybody, but dude, you could run a meta ad and have one product and have these people calling you to try to buy, and you just transact, 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 transact. And it's not
Wow.
solutions based selling, it's just grabbing some commission and moving on.
How easy is it to forget why why how easy is it forget or not why the business exists in the first place when things are that easy?
So difficult, because, like, I even saw it with myself when I was like 100% producing, let's say 2018, 2019. Like, you're talking about taking in 60, 70, $80,000 a month. That starts to jade you in the fact that, well, I'm the shit. I can sell ice to an Eskimo, it doesn't matter. And I remember in 2019, I had a death claim, and I dealt with a lot of younger people for most of my career. So, knock on wood, not a ton of death claims. But I had one, and it was a couple $100,000. And I was always a big proponent. Like, if the person was local, I would try to drop off that check or be there when it was delivered, or whatever the case may be. And the guy had passed away, and I was talking to the wife, and the daughter was like, a teenager now, when she was like 10 or something when I first wrote the dude. And that brings you back to reality of, like, serve, don't sell. Yes, you have to be in this business to make money, because if that's not your initial intention, you're going to be too empathetic and then you're not going to close shit. I'm a firm believer of that. But, like, sometimes you need that reality check of, holy shit, we're selling solutions that create financial wellness in people's lives when the worst day in their lives occur.
Hmm.
So, I think the transactors need to experience that, but also the paradox of that is if you are constantly transacting business, I would argue a lot of these agents are not following up with their clients. They're not even going to know if there's a death claim or a critical, chronic, or terminal illness claim or whatever. They figure the beneficiary will call the carrier. They're outside of the transaction because maybe they're not even leaving contact information or business card or whatever because it's all virtual and over the phone. So
Wow.
it's strange that there's reasons that there are billions of dollars of unclaimed life insurance year over year over year, and I think it's getting worse because of that uh, what separation of producer and end user client because it's not that much of a relationship business anymore.
Yeah, how can that affect the soul of the industry?
Oh, it breaks it. That's why you see everybody on social media talking about money, 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 money. Now, granted, I'm not speaking from the pulpit. I did it too. Sometimes you have to self-reflect and say, okay, I've matured as an insurance expert because I was all about Ferragamo belts and cars and money and whatever. And that's how you recruit talent. But at the same token, if you're not focused on the solutions and the end user client as a whole, there's no money to be made anyway.
Those that listen to the show, they know John Schwartz, a regular on the show for years and years and years. We worked together for years and years and years, and his loss, you know, is a grief. It's also a blessing. It's like a reminder, like why he started the company. That culture matters. It's really priceless to have a relationship with somebody that you enjoy working with. And, here I am. That thought is spurred from the meaning, right? That is coming from what you're saying. I mean, what is the purpose of insurance and the very base level? And I know there are different value propositions in that we can go through even, in brief. But what's the purpose of insurance? Why is it even a thing?
Yeah, essentially, every product under the sun is just a hedge against risk. You have term insurance, which is hedging against what if I die? I'm going to spend a few shekels on a monthly basis that if I die, quote unquote, prematurely, my family's not screwed. It's a hedge against early illness, injury, or death. You have IULs or whole life. Those are long-term hedges against market volatility. It's not going to be your whole portfolio, and it shouldn't be, but it's a hedge. Market's down when you go to retire, draw from your permanent products. Example, annuities, still a hedge against market risk. Shouldn't be your end all be all, but you get some steady growth, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% year over year over year. It's a hedge against market volatility. Property and casualty, we don't sell that much of it, but home and auto is a hedge against risk. The likelihood of your house burning down, I don't know the stat, but it's probably pretty low. But if God forbid it happens, you only spent a few dollars on a monthly basis to protect it. So arguably, the at its core is what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? I'm going to pay a few dollars in premium, hyperbole, to protect against that. And it's how much hedging do you want? We look at some of these wonderful investors out there and some are so risk tolerant it doesn't matter. Okay, well, then you may need less insurance than the next person. If you have someone that's completely risk adverse, you need a shitload of insurance across every capacity of the portfolio. But that's all it's there for, is to hedge against potential risk.
Immediately as you were saying thing in the house, I had an emotional arousal. I was thinking about all of the priceless things in our home. What the heck would happen if it went up in flames?
Yep.
Are you like there? So I don't know that. I'm a lay in that. I would as a that there was fear immediately in my brain when I was thinking about it because selfishly, for example, I have like these encyclopedias from one of my advisors that is priceless. Like, how do I get? How do you even get over that? I guess is some type of compensation helps you grieve.
Yeah.
Like buy, and there's other things that are less priced. Like can rebuy the 2,500 books or the sofa or whatever. But that was a visceral, I had a visceral like thought picture come in my head when you the house thing. Because so yeah, what are the odds? But if it happened, then what?
Yeah. Yep.
Um so the mission is to let me just eliminate the friction of clients um, and agents doing business together. If that's the mission, because if I understand correctly, as the industry has become more technological, uh, there's a connection that's being lost potentially between professional customer, professional consumer that's impacting the soul of the industry. So how is all things insurance group rectifying that? What are some of the what's your part of your vision and some of the things that all things insurance group is working on to rectify that friction, eliminate.
Part of it is that Swiss Army knife approach. And if you've listened to previous episodes, you've heard me talk about why this is so important. But from the sheer aspect of eliminating the friction and taking care of your client, if you are not using a Swiss Army knife approach, and I'm not talking to neophytes out there, if you're in your first 6 to 12 months, learn 1, 2 products, right? But overall, within like a 2 to 3 year span, because this should be your career, if you're not doing that, you are creating friction because you are being transactional, because you are not taking a holistic approach on being a true insurance advisor. Because at the end of the day, for those veterans out there that maybe are like me and do a Swiss Army knife approach, A affects B, which is affecting C, which is affecting D, E, F, G, all the way across the alphabet. It's one collective circle or ecosystem, these insurance products. And like, not to get in the weeds, but if you're drawing too much income on your RMDs and your annuities, that's affecting your IRMA, which affects your Medicare payment, which affects how much money you can use towards life insurance, which affects what your out-of-pocket expenses look like on a monthly basis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're only doing the things that we're licensed in, but you have to be taking this holistic approach with people. And also, this will force you to not be so transactional. When we're looking at this Swiss Army knife tactic from a sales process, we're usually not closing on the first sit, or maybe we're closing one product if it makes sense or it's an emergency. But a lot of sit number one is discovery. Sit number two is presenting. Sit number three is close. Now, if you're only a one trick pony, yeah, you got to one sit close them because there is no holistic approach. You got to transact business and you got to get the hell on to the next client.
I think I got it. If I'm thinking, I'm listening, I'm a professional, and I'm seeking that professional, that higher level of success. You're saying, look at more than just one thing, look to learn it, look to understand it. That'll actually lead to necessitating a relationship for the long term with a customer because you have more value for them. So there's more you can do for them. Therefore, there's more to talk about.
Yep,
Therefore, stay in touch with them. So a big part of what you've exemplified in your career is that philosophy is a big part of all things insurance group.
100%.
Because there's more if I only have one thing, I'm less likely to stay in touch over that long period of time. And well, because what do we have to talk about?
Right.
But there's more that we am I kind of getting it?
Yeah. And how we're compensated too grossly affects your relationship with that client. If you're only selling, let's say, life insurance, our renewals arguably are dog shit on life insurance. So if I'm just selling that, why would I stay in contact? I'm making $10 a year off that person. Having a conversation loses you money on a P&L. So if you're not taking everything into consideration, yeah, there's no lifetime value of that relationship.
I had a visual of Santa Claus writing people. You just pay Santa and cookies.
Yeah.
What now? I am curious about this. Going from being an advisor and a professional, yeah, advisor, professional, building a very deep tenured book of business with your clients for many, many years to a leader of those that want to model and build what you've accomplished, whether they're captive or they're independent.
hmm
What's that been like? Going from being that advisor to the customers to that leader to those aspiring to model that career
Yeah, one, it's
and even exceed it.
hard, hard, hard. And reason being in the beginning is sometimes, and now I have empathy for what teachers go through, right? In school, sometimes you want to choke them. Like I taught you this. What, why can't you just regurgitate it, you know? So like in your infancy of management, or if you want to start an agency or an IMO one day, it's like you got to take a step back and remember what it was like 10 years ago when you didn't know shit about shit, and put yourself in their shoes, which is tough. The antithesis of that too is when to just stop. Like you can't get blood from a tree, and statistically, maybe 8% of the people that come into this industry are going to be successful or at least make it. So very low stats. So just knowing when to, the terrible thing to say, but give up because you're not going to get anything out of them, and you can't want it more than they do. So if they're not understanding, they're not comprehending, they're not bought into the vision, sometimes it's just not a fit, and you got to move on. And I spent a lot of time earlier on, and ATIG's coming up on we're 4.5 years old right now, so nothing crazy. But even like when I was first on this podcast starting ATIG, like some of the team that I had, I was like, come on, like do it. You don't want it as much as I do. What the hell? And you can't force that. So knowing, and it's still a balancing act, and I'm not perfect by any means out of it on, hey, when to Uber invest in people, especially when you see something in them that they're bought in, they're understanding, they want it, versus, hey, we gotta walk away from this relationship. I like you, you're great, but this isn't working.
What are some early signs that someone has a passion for their career?
They're like a sponge. Like I take note of like my call a spade or captive people are LOAs that are like ATIG agents, and we pay for everything, and they're a reduced comp, but they're with me all the time, wanting to learn, asking questions, writing things down. Like I'm sure you've been in a meeting, and all the listeners have been in a meeting when you're trying to teach something, and like no one's got a notebook. Like, what the fuck are we doing? So like being proactive, writing things down, asking questions, etc. Um, the the wanting to learn more is exciting. And sometimes, you can be busy one day and get bombarded with questions, and you're like, Jesus Christ. But you have to take a step back and be like, the fact that they want to know and absorb and understand, and sometimes they need two or three times with the same question, same answer, um, that's a good thing. They want to achieve greatness, and they're bought in knowing that you're going to take them there. The antithesis of that is the agents, and you have to realize early on, and this goes for probably any sales career. Hey, what'd you say? I said this, this, and this. Oh, you should have said this, this, and this. Well, I did say that. No, you didn't. And I'm not arguing with you about like this constant combativeness, even though it's not malicious or mean or anything. It's just the ability to not take responsibility and not be teachable, coachable, and have a will to want this.
Mm. How do independents get the most, you're in there, get the most out of working with their right, their powers that be, or the independent marketing organization? How would you advise them to get the most out of the relationship.
The again, call a spade to spade because I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. The margins on brokerage are very small. So maybe your upline, your direct manager, right? Maybe you're talking to him and her on a daily basis, which I would encourage you to do. If you're independent and you're layered, call it MLM, whatever, but there's a direct person above you. It's probably not the IMO. It's probably somebody intermediary. Talk to them on a daily basis. For the love of God, like ask them for help, get on scheduled meetings, etc. But the margins on the brokerage side, let's use ATIG as an example. We have a lot of agents that come independent and they want higher comp and they want to be like all on their own and just plug into trainings and stuff. I can't be talking to you 12 hours a day for 12.5% margins. That doesn't make any sense. So when I host a training call, a webinar, a gathering, a whatever, be on that, dude and dudette. Like if you're in an organization and you're independent and you're like, oh, I'm my own boss and you have entrepreneur in your fucking Instagram bio, like plug into the resources that they are giving you because they can't give you everything. They already gave you the compensation package, right? Which is higher than if you were captive or LOA. So when they have a once a week training or they have a once a month gathering or they have a university or they have this or they have that, you have to plug into the tools because what happens is brokers run around and they're on social media saying, my upline doesn't pay attention to me. I never get to talk to him, blah, blah, blah. Well, are you on the training calls every week? No. Well, did you go to the team meeting last summer? No. Well, that's your fault, man. That's why you're gonna fail. So, like, if you want the independence of being independent, you still have to take advantage of what your uplines or organizations are providing to you. If you're not, it's your own fault.
You said talk to the direct above you. What advice would you have of how to go about doing that in a way that is respectful and honoring and
So one, I think we have to take a step back to how you were recruited, right? So there needs to be vetting of that upline, just like the upline is going to vet you as a potential producer. There has to be a mutual relationship here. So if your upline has been in the business for 5 seconds and he's recruiting you to get more bodies and such, maybe that's not a good opportunity for you unless you guys are going to be running buddies or whatever the case may be. So you have to question their experience, their success, ask for track record because they're going to ask that of you subsequently. Then set the precedent if you haven't already, and then I'll touch on that for a second. But if you haven't already, set the precedent of, hey, can we get on a call once a week, Thursdays at 1:30? These guys and gals get paid only if you get paid. So they're not going to be like, no, fuck you. We're not getting on a standing call. But you got to ask for that. Because when I was first starting before the whole IMO scene and I had like an agency and I was an upline, agents would come to me and be like, hey man, you haven't reached out in like a month. You reach out. If you need help, you got to tell us. Like, I'm no mind reader. So, no upline manager or whatever adjective you want to use is going to get pissed at you for asking for standing calls, reoccurring Q&As. Can you ride with me on an appointment? Like, that's what they're supposed to do. So
mm,
set that precedent ahead of time. And if you haven't, just call them up today on a Saturday and be like, hey, man, you got 5 minutes? I just want to break down a standing schedule with you. I appreciate that so much. I live and die by my Gmail calendar. So if I have a standing call with Jay every Friday at noon to talk about what happened in the field that week, that excites me because that producer was proactive to do so. So then I want to pour into them.
mm. And what yeah, where it seems like there's a tension or I don't know how to maybe you could speak to this, but like captive independent tension of like one is superior to the other, or can you elucidate in the industry? Is that
Yeah.
a true tension, or how would you say they're different? How would you say that they're the same? What thoughts do you have on either? And who's attracted to either and what are the pros or cons about you.
Yeah, I think the problem is like everybody's got an opinion because an opinion's like a you know what, right? So, like, there are negatives of independence. There are negatives of being captive, but there are also far outweighing positives in both situations. Like, for example, and we'll go in order. My captives, my LOAs, whatever you want to call them, let's call a spade to spade. I own their book of business until they graduate, quote unquote, right, and become brokers. Um, Half of them make more money than the average independent insurance agent. So, what's more important to you? Do you want to be a business owner and put that title on your social media profile? Or do you want to learn, be a sales tactician, and still make six figures a year and have all the resources given to you to be able to do so? And maybe you want the camaraderie of being in an office. Maybe you want a laptop purchased for you, or you don't want to worry about leads for the first 3 years of your career. All that's a reason to go captive. Now, captive in the right scenario, I would go to a brokerage so that way you can be all things to everybody and not be a captive to one carrier or one institution. That's a negative. So there are gives and takes. On the independent side, if you want to be independent, you bet your ass you're going to have a budget. If you want to come in and just be a glorified salesperson, and I ask you if you don't, do you have $3,000 to $5,000 to start your business? Well, what the hell do I need that for? I have a license. All right, go cold door knock a neighborhood then. Like you're not ready for independence. Independence is I am becoming a business owner and I'm going to look to mommy and daddy, my IMO or agency or organization, for help every once in a while, but ultimately it's on me. And a lot of people are not ready for that. Now, the ones that are, yeah, fuck going captive. You should be 100% LOA. You got 50 grand in the bank and all your bills can be paid for the next 6 months for dipping your toe into this. Dude, dive in with both feet. Independence is the way to go. But like during my recruiting calls or fake interviews, let's call it what it is. It is a recruiting call. I asked that question, like, where are you at in your life? And then also, this is a touch for the recruiters. You can sniff out fear really easily too. Well, I
Mm.
want to be independent, but I don't have money right now, so I'm just looking for a job. Well, why don't maybe go get a job and save some money for the next 6 to 12 months, then quit and go independent. Like, I'm not here to run a charity and just pay you to be and then eventually get you to independence. Like, you're going to have to do some work. So, I think there are negatives and positives on both sides of the coin, but both when that prospect or that client, because agents are your clients too at the end of the day, from a perception standpoint, depending on what they need, the positives far outweigh the negatives on both sides of the coin. If I could go back in time, I would have went 100% captive to a brokerage when I first started. Instead, I was captive to one company. And then I moved and I was captive to one company. And I learned a lot, but over 18 months, I was like, Jesus, I basically wasted 18 months because I was smart enough to kind of do it on my own, but I needed some support. So how I have it structured, I wish was available 15 years ago.
Why would you have done when I was a captive to a broker?
Because I wanted to learn life, health, disability, investing, like the whole shebang bang. And where I was at, it was, nope, you're going to do this, and this is our process, and these are the 5 products that we sell. Go sell them. And I was like, and it disenfranchised me, even being 21, 22 years old, saying, well, I can't learn anymore. Like, this is fucking boring, and that was just my perception. Arguably, though, I'm glad I didn't and I had that experience because if I was captive to a brokerage, I'd probably still be there, making $1 million a year, selling on my own pen and just kicking it. So everything happens for a reason.
But that's possible. It's possible for some of our listeners that desire to earn that type of living to serve ultimately everyday people with these valuable products. It's possible to earn that kind of a living.
1,000%. Yeah, I got kids now that are still in college that are making 60, 70, $80,000 a year in school. Like it's crazy. But you need to go to an opportunity that fits best for you. And again, it can't be like hey, I really need a position, but like I can only work 5 hours a day and I got this and that and the other thing. Like, would you tell a W-2 employer that? Like, they'd be like, all right, next candidate. You know what I mean? So, regardless if you choose captive or independent, you got to be full time, dude. Otherwise, you're a hobbyist, and that's okay. It's all right to have a real estate license and sell one house a year and use that to go on vacation. But, like, no offense, don't bug me with that shit. There are opportunities out there for part-timers that are probably better suited than maybe ATIG or some of my competitors. So it has to be based on you. Because if you're not fully bought in to whatever the opportunity is, you're going to fail out real quick.
Final question. How important is for our listeners to have a goal?
You have to work backwards, otherwise nothing is ever going to come to fruition. There's two reasons for that. One, if you don't have an end goal in mind, how the hell do you know what steps to take to get to wherever you're going anyway? It's like looking, I gotta get to New Jersey with no map. Like what? Right? Number two, for me to say, like, even when I was personally producing, oh man, I made 250 grand this year. You know what would be cool? 500,000. Well, that's doubling. And you're staring up the mountain at double income and being like, Jesus, that looks hard to do. Well, imagine I already made 500,000. What path did I take up the trail to get there? And that's an easy way to map out success versus like, oh, I'm staring at this giant fucking unobtainable goal. How am I ever going to get there? Well, pretend you got there already. And how did it happen? Work backwards.
Hmm.
So get the goal first, because if you have no trajectory, you're just going to run around aimlessly. And one, you're going to turn into a transactional person because the goal is always going to be money and there's no why behind it. So you're going to turn into that piece of shit that we talked about earlier on. Um, and two, it's very hard to help people with no goal in mind. And that's end user, client, or agent, you know, because there's no reason.
I want to end on this actually. How, if at all, does ATIG's RMS increase connection with consumers and eliminate friction between clients and agents?
Well, if you're using the RMS relationship management system properly, you're always in touch with your clients. Now, it's not maybe you, but they don't know that. So the RMS is pumping out articles, education, birthday cards, fucking holiday messages, like all this stuff. Because yes, if you're in insurance, you should be selling insurance and letting some of the tech in 2025 do some of the simple processes. But you're still cultivating that relationship because of drip campaigns and you're getting more sales because of it. I sent a birthday message, not me, the RMS did it, right? To a client that I sold 3 years ago. And now we're doing his companies because he was in
Amazing.
Inception 3 years ago and now he's got like 50 something employees. Well, if I didn't have the RMS blast that out, Pete Fournier is not thinking about Jerry on a daily basis. No offense, Jerry, if you're listening, but like that the tools allowed me to maintain that relationship as I'm running and gunning. So if you can't be in contact with everybody at all times, that's a good thing. It means your client base is huge, but leverage some sort of tech stack to do it for you.
Yeah, to acknowledge what everyone has limits of how much one can take on.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting from that. Oh, not all right. And this will be my last question because I have more, but what we'll have to do part two.
Yeah.
How important or where does effort fall into this conversation? Because I was thinking you said the relationship management, um, the RMS, it would take effort to set that up or to get involved in that. And that's something new, that's something additional.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
where do you
Just like
see
anything
effort
else,
fall in?
that I'm teaching in the insurance space, do as much work up front as humanly possible so you can do less later. So that goes from a planning perspective. Oh, if I'm meeting with you as a client on the first call, that's discovery. So I could get all the information I need. So that way I don't have to do more work later. You're coming into ATIG, we'll get the RMS, get it implemented, get it built to spec, get your questions answered, learn how to use it. Why? Because it's going to limit your man hours later. The more work that you put in up front, future self is going to thank present self. And that goes for anything. Underwriting, same thing, right? Get all the medications, medical conditions, so that way the carrier's not like, what about this DUI 5 years ago on Joey Smith, right? And then you're like, oh shit, all this paperwork. So implement more work up front because your present self has to take care of your future self.
Share this with someone that you know and care about in or outside of the industry of insurance. And I was almost going to say, don't share it with your competitors. However, culture matters, and I that's not a good way to think. I have to say that. Pete, thanks so much for being the example, and I appreciate your time. Look forward to part two, going through the beliefs of all things insurance group and its purpose and where it's where the organization's going. Clearly it's growing exponentially. So thanks for
Thanks so
coming
much.
back on the show.
Appreciate you.
Please share this with a friend. Leave us a review. We will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.